Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. These are your DC Comics for the week of January 31st, 2022, 2023. Yeah, time flies. Cut a year off. So it's a fifth Tuesday in the month, which is so strange, right? Now that DC Comics come out on Tuesdays instead of Wednesdays. Oftentimes, I say this all the time, when it's that extra, there's 4 months that have that extra week, but then DC is no longer always the same as everything else, right? So this January, there's 5 Tuesdays, but there's not 5 Wednesdays. So as oftentimes publishers try to catch up when they have that extra week, so to speak, or they put out the annuals or they put out specials. And in this case, anthologies. So
painful reads. I find them. I don't like anthologies. I prefer not to read them. I don't like a bunch of stories in one. I like 20 to 30 some odd pages. But man, these 105 pages and 86 pagers, I just sometimes they feel like a chore to get through.
I agree with you. Here's the thing that I have to remind myself. Like, there's so many times before. Like, if you turn the clock back about 3 years, DC, maybe 40 years, DC was not doing anywhere near the number of anthologies they're doing now. They do so many now. And I remember back then, oftentimes I would say DC should do more anthologies, Like, if you're trying to attract new readers, why wouldn't they give you more bang for your buck? Technically you're paying whatever, $3.99 or $4.99 for a 20-page comic. Well, now you're getting a 100-page comic or an 80-page comic, and you're only paying $1 or $2 more, $5.99, maybe as much as $7.99. So, you're paying, say, twice as much, right? If it's $7.99, but you're not getting 40 pages, you're getting 80 pages or 100 pages. So technically it's more value. And the other thing it does is it gives some lesser known creators or creators that don't have a regular gig a chance to see what they can do. So for that reason, I think anthologies are a good thing. However, for guys like you and me that read everything and buy most of it, you're right, anthologies. And there's a couple of the ones here where, one in particular, I struggled, man. I really struggled. And what I find myself thinking is it's not that anthologies are bad. It's not that these stories are bad. It's just I'm not really the target audience for for this particular book. That's what it was kind of showing me. So anyways, let's kick it off. The first book is a one-shot. So it's not an anthology. It is just one story, but it's big. It's 40 pages. It's Batman Legends of Gotham Special. It's written by Andy Diggle. We have art by Carl Mostert, who, if that name sounds familiar, he's the one that did the Bat Hound story in the Batman Urban Legends that Rocky and I both really liked. The colors are by Romulo Fajardo Jr. Letters are by Troy Petrie. And this really picks up on a couple of things. It's a little bit of fallout of Bane killing Alfred and how that affected Red Hood. It's a little bit of following on Brian Michael Bendis' Leviathan, of all things, which really feels like it happened forever ago. And do we really need a follow-up on that? And then we get a little bit of Outsiders as well. So in my mind, far and away the best thing about this story is the Carl Mostert art. The Fajardo Jr. colors are great as well, but I come to expect that from him, especially where Black Lightning is concerned, and him using his powers. That just looks fantastic. Lightning looks like it's glowing on the page, so that's really great. But as far as the story, I found myself wondering who's asking for this. Like, it feels like an inventory story in a lot of ways, like a 2-part story that they didn't know where to put it, and so they said, "Well, let's just put out a special." And maybe because it's been so long since Leviathan, like I said, they're like, "Well, we once Dawn of DC really gets going proper, when it's not just one issue of Action Comics, this story's really not going to have any context. So, if we want to basically get value for the dollars we've paid these creators to do this, I guess now's the time to put it out. But I gotta wonder, like, who's asking for this? Especially because when you get to the end of the story, and I'm not going to talk at all about the story because the story is just kind of meh. So I'll let Rocky talk about that. But the one other thing that I'll say is you get to the end of the story and it says the end ? As we see comics do so often these days. And so I wonder, is there a new Red Hood? Is Red Hood joining the Outsiders? Is it going to be Red Hood in the Outsiders? It's not really a dynamic that I enjoyed. Jason Todd and Jefferson Pierce, they're both kind of alpha males. They're both used to being in charge. I can't really see them getting along. And the only other thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to you, Rock, is I thought the characterization of Bane here was very strange. He's talking with this vocabulary that I've never heard him use before, and he's back to having the venom tubes in his head. Like, he stopped using venom a long time ago. So again, where's the continuity, editors? So yeah, this was only okay for me. I mean, as a standalone story, I will give it credit, even though, as I said, it ties into Leviathan or has some kind of history or context with Leviathan. You could read this as a standalone story, and it's fine. It's probably entertaining. It probably actually works better outside of DC continuity. Just say, hey, this is out there on its own. Don't think about any of the other things that it has, that it touches, because again, there's continuity errors in it. So yeah, at the end of the day, I just thought this was okay narratively, although I did enjoy the art. So what did you think?
Well, first of all, the first thing is that this is called Batman Legends of Gotham. It's a one-shot, and it has nothing to do with Batman, quite frankly. It's an outsider story, so the title is completely wrong. So that's the first clue that this is a throwaway story. Having said that, I'm going to defend the story a bit because it's not entirely a throwaway. It actually is kind of interesting. This is the most interesting that any concept of Leviathan ever was. I mean, this was actually Leviathan. This was a story coming off the heels of the story of Leviathan. Essentially, Leviathan, Mark Shaw, Leviathan, destroyed all the intelligence agencies, was supposedly the only intelligence agency left on the planet. Leviathan was ultimately killed because Talia took over Leviathan. And all this is Leviathan. At one point in Leviathan Checkmate by Brian Bendis, part of the script was Leviathan was trying to infiltrate the Heroes Network and get all the information on all the spies in the world, because they got all the information all the information and intelligence databases were transferred to Leviathan, and Leviathan / Mark Shaw wanted to get information on the Heroes Network, on the Fortress of Solitude, the Hall of Justice, etc., etc. Well, basically, this story, I actually found this story somewhat interesting, personally. That basically this takes place while Batman's off the grid, so we'll presume maybe at some point in the middle of Dark Crisis. We don't know, it's not really clear. But basically, Leviathan is trying to auction off the information that it obtained on all the intelligence agencies. So it's going to sell off to the highest bidder all its information on intelligence agencies and spies from all the intelligence around the globe, and all the information it has on all the heroes and all the villains. And so it's all going to go to the highest bidder. And so it's a who's who of super villainy wanting to bid for this. And so at the beginning, it just shows Red Hood infiltrating sublevel 7, a really one of the deeper levels of the Batcave, and that's being protected by Black Lightning and Katana, who are aware that this information by Leviathan is going to be auctioned off. And ultimately, there's the typical thing at the beginning where they think Red Hood's the bad guy, and then they sort of they have a little fight with each other, and then they decide that, well, Red Hood, would you mind joining us? We need somebody to help us infiltrate this auction. And ultimately, Red Hood calls upon Killer Croc to help him infiltrate this auction where only supervillains are there. Because Red Hood has sort of a quasi-anti-hero status even amongst the villains, arguably, you have to believe that in order to make the story work, he infiltrates the auction. And ultimately, Bane, of all people, ends up spending. He has the country of Santa Prisca, where Bane is, of course, the ruler of. He got the bankers together, and he pays out $100 billion. I mean, Mercy is there from Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor's assistant Mercy is there, and she starts the bidding at $1 billion. There's even somewhat of a quasi joke. There's another person there. Condiment King bids $10 to start the bidding off. Is kind of a joke and kind of funny. And in any event, Bane wins the auction, $1 billion, $100 billion. But then ultimately, this was a very long issue, and through a lot, it was action packed. I thought it was action packed enough. I enjoyed reading this. As I got into it, I actually enjoyed the action-packed nature of it. Ultimately, Black Lightning and Katana have to infiltrate the auction, which takes place in this. It's called D-Bit. It's an orbital crypto bank, and it's this orbital crypto bank is where this auction is taking place, where they're auctioning off, and it's got an to the winner will go an encrypted code that will transfer to you at a secret location, $100 billion. And ultimately, there is, at the end, they want to, while Bane wins the auction and has the information, it's essentially stolen from him. And as it turns out, at the very end of the story, it's actually Talia. Talia sends in one of her operatives, who is this new character, this new short red-haired character, an agent of Leviathan, whose name we are never really given, but she's a very, very good. She sort of plays the patsy, and Red Hood sort of rescues her. Because you think she's innocent, but she's really working for Talia. And what it appears as if what Talia has done is that as leader of Leviathan, Talia purportedly moved to sell off these secrets to get the money. So Talia has pulled off quite the heist. She has managed to get $100 billion from Bane, from the highest bidder, and she's actually kept the information. So Leviathan now is $100 billion richer, and they still are the only holders of the secrets of all the intelligence operations in the world, and agents, as well as the heroes and villains. So it was quite the coup by Talia. Now, the question in terms of timing of this story is interesting, because this story could technically be happening right now. Even though Batman's not in it, the fact is that I think the point of this story maybe is to say that, look, Leviathan is still a powerful player. They're still the number one villainous sort of villainous organization out there, led by Talia. It's now $100 billion richer. It's still powerful. It's still relevant. It just doesn't have Mark Shaw anymore. It has Talia, and the final image is Talia with this holding this intimidating spear and holding in her hand the microchip that contains all this information on the intelligence operations and agents and heroes and all the identities that it had, that Mark Shaw Leviathan originally had access to. So I think that the story has some potential relevance here. Is it absolutely necessary? No, but it's sort of a nice cap on Leviathan. I don't like the way Leviathan Checkmate ended, so I kind of like this. Brings a little bit more closure to it, and it makes more sense as Talia steps up to the plate, and it raises the importance and the agency of Talia as being quite intimidating, powerful in her own right. So, you know, I think, frankly, it's one of the better reads this week, and I can be more critical of it, but I actually enjoyed it. I like the art by Karl Marstart, and for Andy Diggle coming in and trying to piece together all this stuff, he did a good job. I'm compelled to say one thing about Bane. In Task Force X, we already had kind of a moment where Jason Todd dealt with his anger toward Bane, even though in Task Force X, in Task Force Z, as in zombie, even though it wasn't Bane, it was revealed to be Gotham. I feel that this was a little bit repetitive. Andy Diggle dealing with the motivation here with Red Hood wanting revenge on Bane. It didn't quite feel necessarily as impactful as it could, because I felt that we kind of dealt with that through Task Force Z in that series written by Matthew Rosenberg, even though it wasn't really Bane, it was Gotham, but you thought it was Bane for all those 11 issues until the 12th issue. So in any event, it was still okay, and it was still, you know, at the end of the day, it's not necessary to read, but if you're a fan of The Outsiders, you might want to pick it up.
Yeah, I would say for sure, if you're a fan of The Outsiders, Although, really, if you're a fan of Red Hood, this is a Red Hood story more than
Yeah,
it is anything
that,
else. So
that is true.
anyway, on to the first anthology. Hope you're all ready for Valentine's Day. It's DC's Harley Quinn Romances #1. And there are 8 stories in here. It's an 80-page giant. The first one is Harley Quinn and Stranger Than Fiction, written by Alexis Quasarano. Art by Max Sarin, colors by Marisa Louise, and letters by Taylor Esposito. Second one is Batman and Here's to Jack, Here's to Molly, written by Zipporah Smith. Zippora Smith. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Zipporah. So Zipporah. I mean, that's how it's spelled. Anyway, art is by Will Robinson, colors by Andrew Dalhouse, letters by Steve Wands. Power Girl and Power Girl and All American Boy, written by Amanda Dibert. Art by Adriana Mello, colors by John Kalis, letters by Becca Carey. We've got Constantine in Grace, written by Frank Allen. Art by John McCrae, colors by Mike Spicer, letters by Becca Carey. Fire and Ice and Dating App Disaster, written by Rafael Dracon and Carolina Munoz. Art by Iguara, letters by Yvonne Placencia, and letters by Becca Carey. Midnighter and Apollo in Across the Multiverse, written by Greg Lockard. Art by Guillermo Macione. Colors by Fabs Nacero, letters by Ariana Mayer. Once Upon a Romance Novel starring Kite Man, written by Jessica Burby. Art by Priscilla Paredes. Colors by Michael Atea and letters by Seda Timofonte. And finally, Aquaman and Harley Quinn in Splendor in the Foam, written by Ivan Cohen. Art by Fico Ossio, letters by Carlos M. Mangual, and colors by Sebastian Cheng. So I will say this before I say anything else. The covers on this, every one of them, is fantastic. It has like this worn out edge, like an old battered dime store romance novel that's been read hundreds of times,
Yeah.
including one with Clark bare chested that I'm sure many people will find very alluring. Um, I'm not necessarily one of them, but I like kind of the throwback style of these covers. That being said, this is not for me. Romance novels, romance stories. Yeah, it's not. The Harley Quinn one to start it off and to finish it, I thought were especially um, like missed the target for me. Like I really didn't care for him. The Batman story that was second, I thought was okay. The Constantine one, maybe a little less than okay, but still better than the 2 Harley Quinn ones. The Fire and Ice one, also okay. Midnight Apollo, okay. The Kite Man one, I thought was pretty funny. It actually has a good ending on it, so I did enjoy that one. The one that I thought, okay, I'm glad I read it and I would read it again, was the Power Girl and the All American Boy, which turned out to be Jimmy Olsen, written by Amanda Dibert, which I suppose is no surprise because I'm a fan of Amanda's writing. And the art in that one by Adriana Mello is really good. The colors are good. The pacing was good. And I'm reading these, right? And I'm like, just not in the mood. Maybe it's because, I'm old and not single and dating anymore or whatever, that I don't really care to read this kind of stuff. But I found myself when I got to the Power Girl one, I was like, no, I'm into this. I'm into this. Like, I like the idea of Power Girl and Jimmy Olsen. Like, I like
Yeah.
them together as a couple. Well, and I should say Star and Jimmy Olsen, because
Karen Starr. Yeah. Her name.
yeah, Jimmy doesn't know that it's Power. Although he certainly has a crush on Power Girl. He's taken plenty
Yeah.
of pictures of her, and who wouldn't, right? I mean, Power Girl's, built like a tank. She's awesome. So, yeah, that one I enjoyed. That one I would read again, and I would be all in for that relationship of Power Girl and Jimmy Olsen. I think that would be fun. Um, but the rest of them were, yeah, just okay to below average in my mind. Yeah, this was hard for me to get through. It took me like 3 different sittings before I finally got through all of it. So, yeah, maybe you enjoyed it more. What did you think?
Well, I did. First thing I want to talk about is the Power Girl story. I'm kudos to writer Amanda Diebert, because this Power Girl story, and along with the art by Adriana Mello, this is what Power Girl should be. They should take this story out and put it in Action Comics and get rid of that abortion that was in Action Comics 1051 by Lee Williams. This is the Power Girl I know and love. This is a Power Girl who is impactful, who's intelligent, who's the head of $1 billion company, who's super intelligent. And frankly, what better way? It makes far more sense that Power Girl is like, it has to be asked because no one's bothered to ask it. So I'm going to say it. Power Girl is not a member of the Superman family. She shouldn't be. She's Power Girl. She's not related to the Superman family. She's from Earth too. She's not actually. There's no direct correlation between Power Girl and the Superman family, quite frankly, other than the fact that she's very, very different. So even what they did by giving Power Girl like the changing her costume by giving her that little mini jacket with the S on it, that should be explained. If you're going to make Power Girl a member of the Superman family, why? How is Power Girl a member of the Superman family in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that she explain that? But they don't bother explaining it. Instead, all of a sudden, she's a telepath, no explanation at all. She's just an Action Comics. This here, having her date Jimmy Olsen, having her as Karen Starr date Jimmy Olsen, that would be an interesting way to pull her into the Superman family. This is what works. Also, it's a little bit absurd that Jimmy Olsen doesn't know that. I mean, she's not even wearing glasses. Of course, I thought everybody knew that Karen Starr was Power Girl. I thought it was fairly obvious. She doesn't hide. She doesn't even change her hairstyle, for God's sakes. She's identical, literally identical. You got to be brain dead to not know that Karen Starr is Power Girl. I mean, totally brain dead. Same hairstyle, same breasts, same pay. I mean, you really got to be blind. I mean, if she was at least small-breasted in her secret identity, she's not. But, okay, I'm nitpicking. Bottom line is here, I love Adriana Mello. Her art's fantastic. She draws the pair very well, thank you very much. She understands that Power Girl is a sexual creature. She draws her that way. But Jimmy Olsen, to his credit, doesn't freak out when he's a gentleman. He loves her. He loves Power Girl. He's a good guy. They end up, going their own ways at the end, and they kiss each other, and it's all well and good. But bottom line is, that's the way you do a Power Girl story. Sadly, we're getting what we're getting in by Lee Williams, which completely misses the boat. But the other story I liked the Constantine and Deadman story, where Constantine Deadman ends up dating a woman that might very well be one of the women that he dated when he was younger, and Deadman occupies a body and goes on a blind date while Constantine is battling some nefarious otherworld force. And it's a nice conversation where Boston Brand reminisces about his life when he was still alive and dating and what have you. It's kind of depressing a little bit, but whatever, it is what it is. There's a nice story about fire and ice called App Disaster, where they fire goes on a blind date. There's a superhero app where superheroes can date other superheroes. Not much was done with it, unfortunately. I thought the story lacked a surprising amount of creativity, quite frankly. I was hoping for that writer Raphael Dracon and Carolina Munoz. I wish it was a little bit more creative, but it's not. It's fire goes on a blind date. Ice discovers that the guy she's dating has some secrets, and then, that's it. And then they decide that for Valentine's Day, Fire and Ice are just going to hold hands and be really good friends. Okay, it's just kind of boring. There's the Midnighter and Apollo story by Gray Lockhart, who's the writer. Again, it's okay. Again, it's just, it's just Midnighter being captured and Apollo going nuts trying to capture him. Not a big fan of the art. Guillaume Macchione on the artist. I got to say, most of these writers here, these are all brand new, these writers. And it bothers me a little bit. These stories, it's hard to judge the writing only because the stories mean nothing pretty much. Like, they're meaningless stories. They're just one-shot stories. But what I don't want to see these writers on mainstream titles, quite frankly, moving forward. I want bigger names for the mainstream DC titles for the dawn of the DCU. these are the rookies, and they, if you want to relegate the rookies to these types of anthologies, fine, but maybe keep them there. They really need to get their feet wet. I'm really nervous because this sort of feels like these stories were sort of basically kind of phoned in. The Kite Man story is probably the funniest because Kite Man, the entire story is him fantasizing about, he's anthropomorphizing his kite. He imagines his kite as a attractive female, and it's kind of a little bit disturbing. And he even gives up a date with an attractive woman because he wants to basically sit there and make out with his kite. I mean, you can read between the lines there, so it's kind of, it's he imagines that his kite's giving him a massage and everything, and that's all revealed at the end. But anyways, there are some stories to have some fun with in here. Again, my favorite by far was the Power Girl and Jimmy Olsen. I agree with you, and the Kite Man was by far the best. And it's I'm not going to be picking this up. There's a temptation on the cover buys here, but I don't know. I've sort of given. To save money. I'm not spending $10 on basically anthologies. I'm more into the stories now because nowadays covers are fairly useless. I mean, cover buys are just maybe that Superman chest. Clark Kent's chest looks pretty amazing there. I might have to pick that up. Woo, sexy Superman. I might have to pick that up. But beyond that, it was nice covers, but I think. Overall, other than the Power Girl story and Kite Man, I think a lot of it is just filler.
Yeah, again, it's tough because, like I said, there's something to be said for giving these writers a chance to get their feet wet, like you said. But yeah, I mean, you do want people to actually spend money on it and be entertained. And again, maybe it's just we're not exactly romance novel reading kind of guys. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, another anthology. This one's celebrating February as Black History Month and celebrating the very wide lineup of African American characters that exist in the DC universe. So we have Black Paradise starring Evan Narcisse with art by Daryl Banks. So I haven't seen Daryl Banks draw a story in a long time. So that was great to see his art back in a DC book. That story stars Amazing Man. Hi-Fi is the colorist on that one. Separate but Equal, which is a Black Lightning story written by Lamont McGee. Chris Cross is the penciler. Juan Castro does the inks, and Will Quintana on colors. The Queen, the Bee, and the Symphony, which is Nubia and Queen Bee, or a Bumblebee story, written by Stephanie Williams. Aletha Martinez is penciler. Mark Morales on inks. Alex Squirmus on colors. Keeping the Peace, which is written by Brandon Thomas and Natasha Bustos does the art on that one. That one I thought was kind of interesting. It's a John Stewart story, and it flashes back to when he was 12 and then current time. And Brandon Thomas's take on John Stewart I thought was interesting. The next story is called Own Your Name. It's Aquaman and Kid Flash, written by Dorado Quick, which I thought was interesting considering it's Kid Flash. And Jordan Clark is a co-writer. Clayton Henry is the artist. Marcelo Maiello on colors. And then, is it the last story? Yeah, Cyborg, called Booyah, written by Morgan Hampton, who's going to be writing the ongoing, was announced last week, writing the ongoing Cyborg. Valentine Delandro is the artist. Marisa Louise on colors. And being that it was Valentine Delandro, whose art we saw in Future State and didn't like.
Black Manta, who's Black Manta as well. So awful.
Manta, but man, the art has greatly improved.
Very much improved, yes.
Yeah, I thought the art was pretty good on that one. And then there's a Vixen and Batwing story, which might be my favorite. I really like their interaction. That was written by Chuck Brown. Peterson Oliveri is the artist on that one. DJ Chavez on colors. And then the last story is an I Am Batman story, or Jace Fox Batman story, called The Calvary, written by John Ridley. Olivier Copiel is the artist. Gorgeous art. Um, and this one's actually one that I read it without really looking at the title page that closely, and then I was like, wait, I've read this before, and sure enough, it even says on the title page, it's a reprint from Batman Black and White Volume 2. So actually, there's one more I almost forgot. It's Sojourner Mullen, Joe Mullen, and where's the credits for this one? I mean, it clearly looks like Jamal Campbell art, but for some reason,
It doesn't
I
show
don't.
the credits for this one.
Yeah, so let me go back to the credits page. Sorry, everybody. Um, and give you the credits for that one if it's here. Yeah, Far Sector preview, um, N.K. Jemisin and Jamal Campbell, as I said. So yeah, I think Far Sector is coming back because it does say it's a preview. There's also some pinups, one by Edwin Galmon of Joe Mullen. There's a Vixen one by Mano Azumi, Nubia by Robin Smith, Steel Family by Jerry Gaylord, Superman by Jay Hero, Signal by Sean Damian Hill, and Bolt by Taryn Clark. So um, I thought these were okay. Again, not great, and it doesn't have anything to do with it being Black History Month. None of them really grabbed me, because none of them really felt that complete. You know what I mean? Like they all felt like, okay, this is part of the story, but not the whole story. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Amazing Man and All Star Squadron, so I was excited to see that. I was excited to see Daryl Banks' art on that, but yeah, it was only okay. The Separate but Equal felt a little heavy handed, to be honest. Um, the John Stewart one, again, I'm just not that big of a John Stewart fan. It was additive, I guess, to um, his backstory. I had no idea he was bullied as a kid, so that was fine. The Cyborg story, also fine. I am intrigued to see what Morgan Hampton does, and as I said, the Valentine Delandro art was better than I'd seen before. The Chase Fox Batman I'd read before. The Far Sector one has me interested. What's going to come next for Joe Mullen? I think she's a very interesting character. But the Vixen and Batman is really the only one where, if there were like an ongoing, I would be interested in reading it. Like let's see where this can go. I like the idea of of Tim Fox or not Luke Fox, sorry, um, Luke Fox and Vixen together as a couple. Although I feel like Vixen's been around so much longer than Luke Fox. Is almost like he's dating his mom, but that's not the case. Like they're actually pretty close in age. She was just introduced, way before him. But anyway, again, I mean, it's an anthology. It's a chance to give some of these creators who haven't done work before a chance to write something, and a chance for maybe some creators like Daryl Banks to come back and get their feet wet. So the other thing that I really liked is I loved actually. You pick this up, and maybe you're not familiar with these characters. Well, at the end of each story, they have a little "Who's Who" entry. So you
Yes.
read this story, but like the first story by Evan Narcisse with art by Daryl Banks, and you're like, "Who the heck is this amazing man? What are his powers or whatever?" You can kind of get it from context in the story, but if you're not sure, hey, here's a quick synopsis of the character. Here's who he is with some beautiful art. So I thought that was great, and I felt like if you're going to do these anthologies, DC, like I was saying at the beginning of the episode, uh, somebody new, a new reader, this is perfect for them because, again, you get more value for your comic dollar, and you're getting a chance to pick up one book, and you get introduced to a lot of characters, but you might have a lot of questions. So I almost think that going forward in all their anthologies, they need to be putting these who's who pages in. Again, you feel like you're getting more value for your dollar, and you learn more about who these characters are. So I thought that was a fantastic choice. I don't know whose choice that was, but whoever it was, maybe it was the editor. I don't know. The editor's not even listed here now. Oh, they're probably listed at the end. And I don't think I mentioned who the letter is. And World Design does all the letters for all of these. So yeah, it was edited by Chris Rosa, or I'm sorry, associate editor Chris Rosa. Marquise Draper is the editor. So if one of them was the one that made the decision to put those who pages in, then kudos to you. So, what were your thoughts on this?
Well, first, I'm going to. I would recommend that if somebody wants to get a taste of the more of the, well, frankly, let's be honest, the B, C, and D listers of the DC universe, you want to pick this up. And I don't say that as an insult. I love my B and C listers, but these are ones that are potentially A listers, you know, good solid B plus, some of them. And they're strong and powerful characters in their own right within the DC universe, especially with the new DC universe moving forward. Now, I hate to say this, and I don't want to get all political, but I think that there's a certain segment of the comic collecting public that might avoid this because it's DC power, and that it was, and that they won't pick it up precisely because it's meant to just highlight the minorities of the minority and the people of color in the DC universe. And so they might not take it seriously insofar as thinking that it's important in terms of continuity, that it's not really important to know the characters, because if these characters are going to show up elsewhere in other stories anyway, so don't we need to pick this up? And I got to tell you that I want people, I'm going to be picking this up because I think that these are stories that are worth reading. I share your sentiment that the who's who that is sprinkled throughout is excellent. I think the stories are worth picking up too. One of the things that's happening is that for the majority of these stories, for about at least probably 80% of these stories, I forget how many of the stories there actually are, but in any event, I'd say about there's only 2 stories here that don't have some level of politics. This does, in other words, this does deal with racism. This does deal with social topics that impact people of color. It does, and it's part of a lot of their origins, whether it's John Stewart, whether it's Joe Mullen, Green Lantern, whether it's Amazing Man during World War II, and it feels more real that way. It feels more impactful. But if you're one of these people where you still haven't gotten over you're still very sensitive to that because of reasons and politics and the comic culture war and blah, 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 then you probably don't want to pick this up because you're just going to find just another reason to feed your own preconceived notions of what a comic book story should be about. And so but I will say this. I like the Amazing Man story because it basically built on his appearance in All-Star Squadron. And it tells the story of what happened to Amazing Man after World War II, where he goes back to Detroit and he basically is combating the real American, who was this sort of robotic racist construct that was created to essentially as a way to create propaganda and basically use race as sort of race as an excuse to sort of attack Americans and to cause division amongst Americans. And I thought it was very well written by Yvonne Narcisse, and Darryl Banks is the artist. I think they did a pretty good job. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was very good, and I love All-Star Squadron. I would love to see Amazing Man make an appearance in Justice Society. I hope Jeff Johns sort of utilizes him at some point, or at least the next generation of Amazing Man had any offspring. I like the story with Black Lightning and his daughters. Victor. Sorry. I didn't do these things in order. Black Lightning and his daughters, Anise, who is Thunder, and Jen Pierce, who is Lightning. That story has to do with, it almost deals with an X-Men sort of idea that there was a school that wanted to have a separate school for metahumans, these teenage metahumans. Teenagers in the DC universe that are manifesting their powers are a danger to the school, so we should create a separate school system for students with abilities. Well, that sounds an awful lot like X-Men, so they're playing with that a bit there. Nothing really comes of it because some students, some evil whatever, racists or who don't like metahumans, they try to create some havoc and blame it on metahumans, create sort of a false flag attack and blame teenage metahumans, and Black Lightning and Thunder and Lightning stop that from happening. And so I kind of like that storyline, and I sort of like the idea of, as we're getting more and more of a new generation of DC superheroes, young teenage superheroes, which we're seeing more and more of, the idea, and we got hints of it in Teen Titans Academy and with the fallout from that. There's a lot of reasons for maybe the citizens of the DC universe to be worried. Look what happened to Teen Titans Academy. Look what happened there. I mean, maybe these new batch of young superheroes, maybe they are something we should be concerned about. So I like that this was touched upon in the Black Lightning story, and maybe we'll see more of it. And we also got the who's who at the end of that. The Nubia and the Bumblebee story was by far the biggest. I don't know why it was in here. It was a ridiculous story, quite frankly, about Bumblebee's husband is a musician, and Nubia, for whatever reason, wants to go to a concert, and then, of all things, Mr. Milieu, and the brain of the Brotherhood of Evil show up. He wants, because the gorilla's in love with the brain, and he wants the brain. He wants to create a nice event for the brain. And anyways, it was a ridiculous story. Again, Nubia we have not gotten a single good Nubia story ever in 2022. We have yet to get the definitive Nubia story. We haven't got one yet at any point in her history. And I don't see anything happening in the foreseeable future. Although there is talk that Wonder Woman will be revitalized going into 2024. I'm not going to hold my breath. Jo Mullein, her character, we got more of a concise, I guess Jon Stewart was first. The Jon Stewart story, I think, was a mistake putting in here, only because he pretty much is getting his own backup. But it's always good to see a different take on Jon Stewart. He actually, in this story, Jon Stewart utilizes Teen Lantern to help him negotiate a peace between warring alien species, and he has Teen Lantern basically create a false flag operation, making these two warring parties thinking that they have a greater threat to deal with, forcing them to come together as allies to battle a greater threat that wasn't really a threat at all. It was just a bunch of constructs created by Teen Lantern. And so it was a nice story and had its good moments with flashbacks to Jon Stewart as a young boy. And I thought it worked kind of well. Aquaman and Kid Flash story, I thought was I didn't mind it. It basically had Wallace West just sort of questioning himself, feeling like one of the less important Flashes, and being a little bit insecure, and ultimately they end up confronting the Thinker, who's sort of mentally manipulating them, aggravating his insecurities, and Jackson Hyde. Nonsense, like, I don't know, Jackson Hyde just pops up out of nowhere. I don't know. There's no reason for them to be together in this particular story. They happen to run into each other. But I thought it was a good enough story, but really doesn't really go anywhere. But it is what it is. The Cyborg story I was the most interested about, because Morgan Hampton is a writer with a great deal of inexperience. He is definitely an experiment, and they gave him the Cyborg title. And so I was really curious to see what he'd bring to the table. You mentioned the art by Valentin Delandro. Valentin Delandro had my vote for worst artist of 2022 by far, and with the work in Black Manta was absolutely awful. I don't think it's any coincidence that Chuck Brown probably didn't want Delandro to draw his story, which is also in here. But this Cyborg story isn't bad, and to the credit of Valentin Delandro, this is his best art that I think he's ever done in a comic book ever. It's substantially improved on the god-awful Black Manta. At least in this Delandro's art, you can actually see backgrounds. You can actually see line work. You can actually see some attempt at creating action and some clarity as to what's happening. And Chuck Brown's, the writer, Morgan Hampton does seem to have a good handle on Cyborg. Might be a little bit cliche, but he has Cyborg say such things as, because these are clues for Cyborg moving forward. I can be the best of both worlds, man and machine. I have to accept who I am. You have to learn that you're more than your limitations. And when you are ready, I'm here to help. Cyborg helps Livewire come to terms with the fact that Livewire feels she doesn't feel like herself because she's always needing energy. She always feels like she's weak. She always feels like she has to power up somehow. And Cyborg is there to say to her, I can help you. And so it's clear that Morgan Hampton believes that Cyborg is a very strong-willed, heroic person. Cyborg also misses his mom terribly, and he has flashbacks of his mom giving him inspiration. And he had a good upbringing. He had a wonderful mother. And I think that's going to be the moral center point of the Cyborg series when Morgan Hampton starts off with it. It's all going to come down to what the stories are like and plot-wise, what Hampton does with Cyborg and Victor Stone. But I thought I was impressed with this, and it's worth noting that that it's not going to be Delandro on the art moving forward. For Cyborg moving forward, the artist is going to be Tom Rainey is going to be the artist for the Cyborg series moving forward. The Vixen and Batwing. I absolutely love this. I think putting Luke Fox together with Vixen is an inspired idea. If it's been done before, I missed it. To my knowledge, I don't think they've ever been together before. It's actually a great Valentine's Day story. I would almost expect this to be in the Harley romance story, but I thought this was just so well done. The report, Chuck Brown. I think this. I'll be blunt. This is this is the best Chuck Brown story that he's written for DC. This is better than all his Black Manta stuff combined. And I quite enjoyed this story. It was short, sweet, and to the point. Basically, it just involves Vixen and Batwing. Basically, they went and they prevent the assassination of a king by the Black Manta. So Chuck Brown actually, it's nice to see Black Manta beautifully drawn. And I'm sure Chuck Brown is pleased to see that it's drawn by Peterson Oliveira as the artist and not Delantro. So I thought the story worked really well, and I love the flirtatiousness and the flirtation and the sexual innuendo constantly. You could these two have rapport with each other. They're attracted to each other. And Vixen and Luke Fox, I want to see more of these two together. And I'm looking forward to it. And I love the who's who of Vixen at the end. I Am Batman reprint. I don't need to discuss that. And I think that takes us, that pretty much takes us to the end. The Joe Mullen story, the Green Lantern, she has an origins based in 9/11. I thought that was interesting. And she was she was the member of the New York City Police Department. There was some corruption. Her partner beat somebody up and she reported him. And then she got linked to a Black Lives Matter movement, and that caused her to get really, really upset. And she felt discriminated against. She felt wronged, and then she ends up. And I'm trying to find the story here, but it's so bloody long on these pages. A guardian of Oa, who guardians look like guardians, but in what I'm gonna have to find this story because I want to show it to people. I'm trying to find.
Yeah, while you're looking for that, I just wanted to comment on the Cyborg story.
Okay.
Yeah, we mentioned Morgan Hampton taking on the regular role. This is a different Cyborg. Like the Cyborg, the Vic Stone, as Morgan writes him, and I'm curious. I'll have to ask Morgan next time I see him. Where he feels like he's drawing inspiration from, because Morgan's way too young to have read the Wolfman Perez Titans when it came out. But I sort of feel like, and not that Jeff Johns took great liberties, but even the Cyborg before Johns put him in Justice League when New 52 started, Vic had become less of a grounded, almost reluctant superhero like he was back in the day under Wolfman and Perez. Yeah, he was powerful. Yeah, he had these abilities because he was, half man, half machine. But if you'd asked him, he would have preferred to have just not had the accident and been human. He was a hero because of, his sense of duty, and he had the ability, not because he necessarily wanted to do it. But that had really changed, or at least it felt like it did, throughout the 90s and 2000s. And especially when you talk about making him a founding member of the Justice League of America, or I guess it was just called Justice League when it launched with New 52. This Vic Stone that Morgan gives us in the story, it's more of the everyday, hey, I'm a hero because it's a circumstance, right? It's a role of circumstance. He's out there in Detroit on the streets, helping out when he can, because he's not going to, turn his back on people in need. Not that he's out there looking to, travel around in space and interface with all, with Brainiac's ship and do all these fantastical things. To me, that's not the interesting part of Cyborg, right? When you make him super fantastical and whatever. Like, I want more of the human side of Vic Stone. What does it mean to be half man, half machine? That was what Wolfman and Perez really explored, how much it bothered him that he didn't feel human. And, David Walker tried to explore that a little bit, but I feel like his run got truncated. John Semper, to a lesser degree, tried to explore it as well. So hopefully with what we're seeing and with the art that we got, it looks like that's the direction they'll be headed, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, what were you going to say about the Guardian in
Well,
the Joe Mullen story?
just changing gears to Joe Mullen, the new Green Lantern. She had a 12-issue series called Far Sector, where we were just introduced to her out of the blue, and she was a new Green Lantern with her own ring that basically powers itself, that doesn't require a power battery, and it's not as powerful as the other Green Lantern rings, but it doesn't need a central power battery to power itself. But it was never clear what her origin was. What was Joe Mullen's origin? And we actually get her origin here. And her origin is that she was basically a cop in New York City. She grew up, and she remembers as a young child witnessing 9/11. And that inspired her, her parents divorced. That inspired her, I guess, ultimately growing up, she decided to become a cop to help the community. Her partner ends up beating up a suspect. She reports her partner. And then while she's reporting her partner, of course, her fellow officers don't like her. Internal Affairs gets involved. She gets branded a traitor by her fellow police officers. And meanwhile, that's just when the Black Lives Movement is gaining momentum. And one of her friends, who's a member of the Black Lives Movement, tags her in a social media post, and she ends up getting fired by the New York Police Department. And anyways, this story has her. It's very interesting. She's in a bar. She's in a bar drinking herself to depression. She's all upset. She's in a bar, and up walks what looks like this beautiful, bald-headed African queen. She looks beautiful, wearing green. It was a very attractive black woman. And Joe Mullen is LGBTQ. She's lesbian, and she makes some comment about how good looking she is, et cetera, et cetera. And bottom line is, she sort of spills her beans. She's drunk, and ultimately this character who looks very regal and elegant and beautiful. Like I said, I call her like an African queen. She ends up essentially sort of slowly morphing into, I guess, a guardian. And it's really weird because guardians look like guardians. We all know what a guardian of Oa looks like. They're small. They're basically small midgets with blue skin. Well, this one it's weird. I didn't know they had the ability to change their appearance, but this is actually a rogue guardian of some kind, and this is the guardian that decided to, out of the blue, just give Joe Mullen her powers. So I don't know. It seems really weird to me. That was my only constructive criticism. Where did this guardian come from, and just decided to go randomly to Earth where there's already 4 or 5 lanterns on Earth, and you're going to why is this guardian going to Earth to look for a random disgruntled woman to appoint her a guardian and then send her off to the far sector to the city enduring to prove herself? It just seemed really, really weird and off to me. Now I realize that Kyle Rayner was sort of that way as well, but there was more verisimilitude in Kyle Rayner's story because the guardian, Ganthet, that gave the ring to Kyle Rayner, that was a desperation move because Kyle Rayner was the torchbearer. It was a desperate move. He had no choice. So I don't mean to be overly critical here. Absolutely beautifully drawn. The art's fantastic on this story. I don't know, again, it doesn't have the preview copy here that we're looking at doesn't have an actual page like the other stories did, but the art's really good. And
yeah, you can tell it's Jamal Campbell.
Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. It's beautiful art. I just, and part of me, I think, is because the way DC has been so bad. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. DC's been editorially mismanaged, I think. Or maybe they just don't have the money or the resources to give these characters more room to shine in their own series. I would have liked to have seen more of Joe Mullen in her own series with more stories rather than, I hate it when you get good stories like this that pique my interest, when they're crammed in an anthology like this, because inevitably they're going to be crammed in with stories that I don't like the majority of the stories. And so that's the only downside I have to these anthologies. I'd like to see more of this. So And I don't know if we're going to be seeing more of Joe Mullion Green Lantern anymore, quite frankly, because we know we're going to be seeing Hal Jordan and John Stewart in the Green Lantern, written by PKJ, and of course Jeremy Adams will be writing the Hal Jordan story, and PKJ will be doing the backup of John Stewart in Green Lantern. But we're not. What's going to happen to Joe Mullion here? I don't know. But hopefully we'll see her in the pages of Green Lantern, either with Hal Jordan or John Stewart. But in any event, lot to cover here in DC Power. Moral of the story is, for people that are curious, I actually recommend picking this up. Between the who's who and between, I think these stories, other than there are some stories that not all are going to appeal to you, but this is a nice backup, and it's reasonably well written. Not all of them are going to hit with everybody, but you'll get a good overall cross section of characters that frankly we don't see enough of.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, up next, another, I guess it's an anthology. It's three stories: Lazarus Planet, Legends Reborn, another one of these Lazarus Planet tie-ins. Several stories in here. The first one's Masks and Monsters, stars Renee Montoya / Question, Alex Segura, the writer, Clayton Henry, the artist, Marcelo Maiello on colors, Pat Brosso on letters. The second story is a Raven and Beast Boy story. And there's, again, no credits page. So I have to scroll through. It's written by Alex Packnadell. Christopher Mitten is the artist. Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Troy Petrie on letters. City Boy is the next story. Greg Pak is the writer. Minkyu Jung is the artist. Sonny Go on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. Up next, we have a Firestorm story. And I'm just looking for the credits really quickly. This one, this is the last story. It's written by Dennis Culver, drawn by Jesus Moreno, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., and letters by Dave Sharp. So, what'd you think of this?
Wow. Okay. Frankly, I have to say that, and I hinted at this last week. All of these Lazarus Planet tie-ins, the vast majority, 90% of them, 90% of all their content, you can pretty much skip, in my opinion. However, every now and then there's always some gold nugget in there that I think piques my interest moving forward. The purpose of the Lazarus Planet one-shots here, the Legends Reborn, the Krypton, Attack of Krypton, or whatever the hell it was, and all these little side names, they really mean nothing, quite frankly. Basically what they are, they're just excuses to put new characters on the board in the DC universe, and to sort of lead to, I'm assuming, create new interesting characters or give new spins on characters we already know moving forward into this dawn of the DCU. So I get it. And so that's what I expect. Having said that, I don't know what the purpose of Masks and Monsters were, the Renee Montoya story. Guess what? Renee Montoya, she's the Question. Do her powers change in this story? No. This is just her as Renee Montoya. She investigates, as the Question, she investigates essentially a murderer who has been hit with the Lazarus rain and who becomes a demon, and she ends up stopping the demon, and that's really the end of the story. That's it. She just ends up stopping a demon. What's the point of that? I don't know. Literally, we got different... What's happening is we know that different people all over the world are getting hit with Lazarus resin, and this is one particular person, as a psychopath, a serial killer who's killed 10 people. He's located near Arkham Tower, and he's killed 10 different people, and Renee Montoya, as the Question, basically defeats him and takes him out. And that's really the end of that story. It's cool to see the Question again, but I'm not sure. Again, there's nothing new about... It's not a new character. It's just a generic, one-dimensional bad guy. Completely squandered, completely pointless, lacking any degree of creativity given the fact of what you have to work with. I was extremely disappointed. Writer Alex Segura, I would think you come up with better idea than that, than just, a bad guy who gets hit by Lazarus rain, turns into a demon, defeated by a woman with martial arts skills, and that's the end of the story. That's it. That's your contribution. That's your potential. You had... Sky's the limit. You got Lazarus, Resin. It's raining from the sky. You can literally create whatever character you want for any story you want dealing with the question, and that's what you come up with. I'm sorry to be so harsh, but man, I expected so much more. But that lack of creativity is endemic through most of Lazarus Planet, in my opinion. But I'll get to some compliments in a moment. Unfortunately, it won't be for the next one, and that's the Raven and Beast Boy story. These are characters which, I know these are fan favorite characters that are beloved. I haven't loved Beast Boy and Raven since going back to the Wolfman and Perez days, and I have no reason to like these characters. This is just Raven and Beast Boy are sort of, they're in this story, they're pulled into an area where she senses that 3 human beings have become demons, and all it is they end up battling Trigon, because Trigon shows up, kills 2 of the demons because they're not worthy, and welcomes the 3rd human that was turned into a demon, gives him a name, dubs him Trilogy, literally calls this new character Trilogy, and drags this young man who's now a demon, whose name is Liam, who Trigon calls him Trilogy, and walks off with him into the pits of hell. So now, I guess, Trigon has a sidekick named Trilogy, because that was really important, because we don't have enough demons in the DC universe. I guess that's okay. We'll see more of them. So this is, all of these Lazarus Planet issues they're speculator alerts, potentially. But I guarantee you that if any of these characters ever become interesting, so be it. They're not interesting in these originating stories by any metric. I was, again, very disappointed in this. And it just seems silly. It just seems silly. These are such boring origins. Literally, it's just all these characters are just. It's just like Power Girl getting telepathy. Okay, Power Girl's got telepathy now. Let's write a boring story to go with it. There's just nothing exciting about these origin stories whatsoever. I just wish there was more of an ounce of some creativity there. Then we get into City Boy. City Boy, written by Greg Pak. This is my favorite story. I want to give writer Greg Pak some credit here, because we first saw City Boy in the 30th anniversary Wildstorm special, which you and I reviewed last month. And he's almost like the sidekick to the Jack Hawksmoor of the Authority, where he can communicate with cities. So he can sort of read and communicate with a city. A city is like a living, breathing thing. Just like Swamp Thing can communicate with the green, can communicate with the nature, Jack Hawksmoor and this new character, this City Boy, can communicate with the heart of a city. And basically, this issue has City Boy. What he does is he scavenges for a living. He can talk kind of like somehow he can somehow talk to a city, and the city will tell him where certain things are hidden. And what's so odd about this, Jace, is that City Boy already has a power to communicate with cities, and all the Lazarus rain does, he gets hit with Lazarus lightning. All it does is that it enhances the power he already has. Oh, boring. So I don't know. It's just sort of he already had powers. And all the power gave to him extra is that one of these dead rats comes back to life and becomes his pet sidekick. And now he can communicate more with the city, but the same as he did before, but even more so. And what he does, just to make sure, just so that we readers know that City Boy is really a good guy, is that he ends up almost drowning in the sewer pits, because in communicating with the city, he now has the ability to walk through cement, or to phase through cement, phase through buildings, because he can transport I'm guessing that he can transport from any part of the city to any other part of the city. He has ability to sort of like go through the cracks, and he has some ability to do that. And unfortunately he does that, and he ends up in a sewage. He's drowning. He gets rescued by Nightwing, but not before he touches a tiara. He manages to find a piece of jewelry, a jeweled tiara, that whenever he touches something, like earlier in the issue, he found a batarang. He found an old batarang that had been used that was still working. He has visions of the original owner of whatever he touches. And so he had visions of Nightwing, and he had visions of this old lady who lost this jewelry. And he ends up returning the jewelry to an old lady, but he refuses to give the batarang back to Nightwing. And so now it's to be continued. So now we have this City Boy for future issues. I actually find City Boy interesting. He's a younger version of Jack Hawksmoor. We did see Jack Hawksmoor try to get a hold of him and try to befriend him in the Wildstorm special to no avail. But that is the most interesting character, I think, in this entire particular issue. Do you want to comment on that, or do you want me to keep going on?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. The next one deals with Firestorm. Firestorm, for fans of Firestorm, I'll say this. Isn't it interesting that with Firestorm, over the years, we've had Ronnie Raymond and Professor Martin Stein. They combined as part of the Firestorm Matrix. And then we had Jason Rush and Martin Stein were in the Matrix. Then it was Jason Rush and Firehawk formed a Matrix. And then Jason Rush and Ronnie Raymond were in the Matrix. And so there's always different iterations of who makes up the Firestorm Matrix. And in this one, we now get, surprise, surprise, because of the Lazarus reign, thanks to the stunning creativity of the writers of DC, now we have another different combination of those that make up the Firestorm Matrix. Because we want to check off a box. Now we have a Hispanic character. Dr. Rodriguez is combining with Ronnie Raymond to make up the Firestorm Matrix. And there's one little twist. They battle a shadow demon, which there's a matrix explosion. Somehow the shadow demon pops out of nowhere, just for reasons. And they, in order to defeat it, Ronnie Raymond, because Professor Stein is incapacitated, he's got to merge with Dr. Rodriguez. And he merges with Dr. Rodriguez. They defeat this shadow demon, but they soon discover that upon dividing themselves back to their human form, Dr. Rodriguez ages considerably, just like Martin Stein did. And so they have to merge again in order to save Dr. Rodriguez's life, because there's something wrong with the Firestorm Matrix that is causing premature aging, because the time is being robbed from Professor Rodriguez in order to create energy for the Firestorm Matrix, and it promises to be continued at some point in the future. I personally don't have any interest in that. I don't find that interesting. None of these hooked me. The only one that I found interesting was City Boy, and and the rest I thought were very, just frankly, uninteresting stories. I was actually overall, I was extremely disappointed in these issues. I see nothing interesting about these characters moving forward other than City Boy, but the other ones were just sort of par for the course. And I was looking for so much more. It's very obvious that that DC just bored. They're completely out of ideas, and they just said, give us one-shot stories of, you can create whatever characters you want. You can give them shitty origins. You can be lazy in your writing. It doesn't matter, because we can just blame it on the rain. Blame it on the rain. That's what it is. All this is being blamed on the rain, so they don't have to come up with compelling origin stories. And I'm just so disappointed. But am I being too harsh?
Yes, 100%. You're being way, way, way too harsh. You were the one that was excited for Lazarus Planet. I can't believe I'm enjoying it more than you.
Yeah.
Alex Segura, if you're not familiar with his work as a novelist, the guy writes like true crime, and he loves comics. So I thought the Renee Montoya story, A Question, was a good mix of that. I like the procedural feel of it. It's got a little bit of a GCPD feel, but then, it is the rain. That's the point, that it's bringing out kind of the bad stuff, that, it's magnifying whatever it is. And in the case of this serial killer that they've been, looking for, the evil monster that's inside of him, the rain manifests it so that it comes out and he actually looks like a monster. Is it the most original idea? No, but with the language and the pacing and the tone and the feel, I thought a very good mix of something that feels like true crime, or like a Law and Order episode or something like that, and the DCU. So I enjoyed that. Plus the Clayton Henry art I thought was really fantastic. I didn't care for the art as much in the Raven and Beast Boy story. And I don't know, whenever Beast Boy's on the page now, I keep going back to the fact that, isn't he merged with Cyborg? Like, again,
Yeah.
that's just swept under the rug, I guess. So that one was only okay, and it didn't really go anywhere. The City Boy, I agree with your sentiments there. I think Greg Pak is doing a fantastic job. He's a very intriguing character. And I do share a little bit of your criticism of the of the Firestorm story, in as much as, man, who's like, so many people have been part of the Firestorm Matrix at one. I wish that they had never done anything but just, can we just keep it Ronnie Raymond and Martin Stein? Maybe one other person, maybe Jason Rush and Ronnie. Like, it's been so many different combinations, and the revelation that Martin Stein was actually this avatar of fire or blah blah blah, and he manipulated things, and Ronnie even makes mention of it here. You tricked me into becoming part of the Firestorm Matrix, and that sort of thing. Yeah, do we really need another person? Not really. At least it certainly doesn't feel like we need another person as part of the Firestorm Matrix, but it is what we have here. So I'm just glad to see Firestorm. Like, he hasn't shown up in a really long time, so it was
That's
just
true.
nice. Yeah, it was just nice to see him. So yeah, overall, I thought it was okay. I clearly liked it better than you. Are these groundbreaking or memorable? No, probably not. But I thought they were fun enough for what they were. So all right, on to the last one. Hopefully you like that more. There's 3 stories here: past, present, future. It's Flash 1 Minute War Special. The past stories written by Jeremy Adams, pencils by Fernando Passerin, inks by Matt Ryan and Jason Paz, colors by Matt Herms, and letters by Rob Lee. And then the present story, also written by Adams, this time with Serge Acuna as the artist, colors by Rebecca Nulty, and letters by Rob Lee. And then the future story, or I'm sorry, there's a second present story, part 2, written by Jeremy Adams, art by Lissandro Esterin, colors by Patricio Del Pech, and letters by Rob Lee. And then the final story, which is the future story, which is written by Jeremy Adams, has art by George Kamambatas. Matt Herms is the colorist, and Rob Lee does the letters. So I wish that it was one artist throughout. I wish it was a consistent look. Not that any of the art is bad; it's all good on its own, but it just doesn't flow very well together. I mean, I understand it's a lot of work for just one artist, so I understand them putting more than one artist on it. I thought the past story was the most interesting because it gives the origin of the fraction, and it's an interesting origin. You almost sort of feel sorry for them or identify with them a little bit, relate to them when you hear about the things that are going wrong with their planet. But then clearly they take things way, way too far. The first present story, Jeremy Adams starring Avery, who we've seen before in Joshua Williamson's Flash run, I thought was pretty interesting. She's just a fun character. I wish that we'd gotten to see more of her. The second present story with the art by Lissandro Esterin. This is probably my least favorite art. It's watercolor, and it's just not my cup of tea. But it's a Godspeed story, and it's been a long time since we've seen him on the page. So it was interesting to see him come back. It just, God, when the page where he's revealed, it's just, the art is so bad. I just didn't care for it. And then the last story, yeah, the art's okay by Combatus. I don't know that this sort of story really suits his style. But it was nice to see Jay all grown up and acting the hero. So overall, it's a fun story. I feel a fun anthology, although I feel like the only story that's really necessary is the first one, because it gives so much context and backstory to the fraction. So what were your thoughts on this?
Well, I think I enjoyed all the stories. They were. I will say this, that I think that if Jeremy Adams had been better appreciated faster by the powers that be, the DC, if DC had recognized what they had with Jeremy Adams as soon as us fans did, and maybe in fairness, it takes time to put these comic book stories together. Because Jeremy Adams is a writer, he's really come into his own over the last year. He's really impressed us fans as fans of Flash. I would have. I think that Jeremy Adams, his stories, and Jeremy Adams wrote all the stories in this Flash 1 Minute War special, and I think the writing is very good. I do think that the art overall is adequate, and that's the best I can say about it. It's adequate. It's not quite up to snuff, but it's okay. I'm going to say this, and I mean this. I don't mean this. I'm being very picky here, and I said this before, but one of the issues that I have with it is if this is a 1 minute war, one of the things that Avery said in the Avery the Flash in the present storyline, where she's battling this Dark Wu. She's battling this Dark Wu character that steals her soul, and then all of a sudden time stops, because that's just right when the Fraction attacks, and she makes the observation, which has been noted in the Flash series already, that she's caught in super speed mode. All of the Flashes are caught in super speed mode, and the Fraction themselves, all the army of the faction, are also in super speed mode. They're constantly in the Speed Force because of technology. But the Flashes are organic conduits. They already embody the Speed Force, so they're already constantly moving at super speed. What I don't like is I wish there was a visual representation or something different about the visuals to indicate that we have a war within the Speed Force. And I don't know how artistically that can be rendered, but if everyone's frozen, then it shouldn't. Then the Flashes and the Fraction should look visually. They should visually be drawn different, either with lightning all around them or some sort of aura around them, to designate them as being fighting within the Speed Force, to give the essence that this is a 1 minute war, that this is a speed. Now, maybe I'm being nitpicky on that. I feel that visually, if ever there was a concept that required one artist with a whole slew of interesting concepts of visual representation, it would be a Flash 1 minute war, and we're not getting that. And that is, I think that's unfortunate. But the writing is good that I'm intrigued enough. I love Avery here. I love the adventure. She defeats the Dark Wu character. She gets her soul back. She manages to hold off the Fraction for a brief period of time. The opening story, talking about the past with the captain of the guard, the captain of the Empress Guard of the faction is Vel Anthro of the House of Sigma. They come from a world that discovered the Speed Force many eons ago, and over time they created technology to access the Speed Force and to advance their technological progress, essentially at super speed. And they're a very powerful race, and they've basically been conquering worlds through the Speed Force since then. And of course, now they've come upon Earth. And what they do is that they come across organic conduits, people like Wally West, Barry Allen, Avery, Jay Garrick, etc., Jesse Quick, anybody, all the Flashes are organic conduits of the Speed Force, and they basically use them. And they're always a threat, one of the first threats they have to deal with. This captain of the guard he's betrothed to marry the Empress and so he's got a vested interest to succeed in conquering Earth, because it's for the Empress, and he wants to marry her and gain and increase his power. And so I like that. It's interesting. I like one of my favorite stories is while the art's not very good, artist is with Godspeed. It's so great to see Godspeed, but my God, you want to talk about poor visuals. I wish Lizandro Etherin, I mean, again, not the greatest art. It's not appropriate for this sort of Flash story. It's just completely out of whack. Backgrounds just aren't there. There's a complete inability to draw lightning. I'm pretty sure a first grader could understands the concept of what lightning looks like, but apparently it's missed by the artist here. And again, I don't mean to be harsh, but come on, man. This is a 1 minute war. This is a Flash. This is Godspeed. This art just doesn't cut it for me, and it's really unfortunate. But it's still the narrative is strong enough that it can survive these artistic deficiencies. But again, this is I can't believe DC. Come on, man, what are you doing? Like, get on the phone. Like, there's artists out there that are better than this, and we're seeing this in the anthologies too. What are you doing, looking for new artists? Pay a little bit more and get the A-listers. And in any event, the future story is great because it's Jay and the Gold Beetle. We know from past stories during the last year, post-Future State, that the Gold Beetle ends up in love with Jay West, and Jay being the brother, Jay and Irie being the son and daughter of Wally West. It's a great story, and it's a lot of fun. And how it's going to play out and how that relates to 1 Minute War, I'm not sure. I suspect that all the Flashes from various time periods may have to come together to defeat the Fraction. That's my guess. But overall, I want to be clear here. I'm being very critical on the art, but I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying the 1 Minute War, okay? I wish there was more artistic consistency, and I think how much better this could be if, can you imagine having one, like Daniel Sampere, can you imagine one consistent artist for 7 or 8 issues of a 1 Minute War, how amazing that would be, And that's not the fault of any one individual artist here. I know each artist has their own style, and in fairness, I don't think they had enough time to maybe communicate different ways of artistically rendering this. But again, the writing's great, all written by Jeremy Adams. I just wish that the visuals were more up to snuff.
Yeah, again, I don't disagree with you. I think for the most part, these are interesting stories, but they just, the art doesn't quite live up to the potential of the story. So, well, it sounds like it was definitely a down week for you. So, dare I ask what book of the week was?
All right, my book of the week. You know what? I would have to go with Flash 1 Minute War. I think the power of the narrative, I'm really excited to see Godspeed and I seeing Gold Beetle and getting the history of the Fraction. I actually really enjoyed that. So I would go with Flash 1 Minute War. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Lazarus Planet was pretty solid as well, but yeah, I think ultimately I would go with Flash 1 Minute War Special as well. And there's only one collection this week. It's Harley Quinn Volume 2, the Keepsake story, Keepsake trade paperback, which we thought was okay, if memory serves. So, so I guess that's going to do it. You got anything that you want to plug for people here?
Actually, this week, no. I'm afraid I'm very, very busy at work, so I might do something on the weekend, but I haven't really decided it yet. There's a couple of indie comics I might review, but I haven't decided. So I'm just too busy at work. So, what about yourself? You got some interviews coming up, or?
Yeah, there is an interview that's coming up. Same day this drops, actually, for a Zoop campaign that's starting off about the Legend of Gilgamesh. Actually. It's a second issue of a series. I got to read the first issue. It's pretty solid. So, if you're somebody that's looking to give your kids a little bit of education while they're reading their comics, you might want to listen to that. So, other than that, I should have some other interviews coming up, but nothing that I can announce at this time.
Well, good. All right.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to head over to YouTube if you don't subscribe already to Rocky's channel, and subscribe. It is Comic Space Boom ! And like this video and leave comments and all that kind of stuff. We get some pretty good conversations going at times. Conversely, if you check us out on YouTube all the time, then be sure to head over to wherever you get your podcast and do a search for The Comic Source and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the audio only content. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.